I love what I do. I love product, right? I love talking about product. I love engaging with people about product. I love helping them with sourcing product or what's best for them or what fits their lifestyle. So for me, it's fun.
No fluff, no jargon, just the honest truth from the name over the door. This is Dominic Smith Talks Tech.
Hello there, my name is Dusty Rhodes and you're welcome to Dominic Talks Tech. Buying electronics or appliances can sometimes feel like a gamble where you're just another receipt number for a faceless corporation. So it's interesting that here in Ireland we have a trusted local expert who has staked his name and very reputation on every sale, ensuring quality and genuine aftercare. For the past 20 years, he's been building a multi-award-winning independent chain of electrical stores across the country, and his name is indeed above the door. But just who is Dominic Smith of Dominic Smith Electrical? We're about to meet him and find out about his attitudes to service, how he knows what makes a product good, and how do we get the best price. It's a pleasure to welcome the Managing Director of Dominic Smith Electrical, Dominic Smith. How are you?
I'm good, Dusty, and you?
Very, very good. Can I start off, Dominic, by just asking a little bit about yourself? Because we've always seen your name above there. Where are you from and where do you live and what's your background?
Okay, I come from a little parish outside Virginia in Cavan called Killincare. So grew up there, left and went to do a college course, which I spent a year at. And I had to leave that for family circumstances. My dad got very ill and I stumbled into the electrical game at 19 years of age, working for Discount Electrical in Mountjoy Square in Dublin, and I'm still in that game 35 odd years later. So
was there any influence from your parents on that choice of career?
No, it was very much a personal decision because at the time, those of us who remember the late 80s or early 90s would remember that there were particularly difficult times in this country. So it was important that I started earning some money, and this job came up and I applied for it and I got it. So with the intention of putting in some short term there, finished my college course, wanted to be an accountant, didn't get any of that done, so still in electrical retail all these years later. So no influence, just that's the way it unfolded. So
just seeing as we've mentioned your parents, and when you're growing up they give you so much and instill their values into you, and I know values are very important to you. What would you say is the one value that your parents taught you that still guides how you treat people today?
Just honour and respect, really. You know, you're always kind, you're always nice, you're always polite. However, you do stand up for yourself. My mother in particular would always have wanted, what's the best we can get? What's the best we can afford? Why should I buy it? She wasn't one for just buying something for the sake of buying it or doing it so to do a short term. She wanted the good stuff if she could get to it at all, and she'd save for it and she'd work hard for it. And that instilled in me, you know, and she always respected good service. And it really affected her when she didn't get that, you know, she took it personally almost. And that stays with you, you know, like obviously, you know, money was so tight back then and it was a very difficult time and everybody respected the value of a pound as it was then, you know. So, and I think they do now. I think that's coming around again. So
when you started working, give me the elevator pitch of your career.
I finished college in 1991. I didn't finish it. I dropped out after my first year, did my exams, passed those. I never went back to college. I got this job working in Discount Electrical, which is an old electrical retail outlet formed in the early 70s on Mountjoy Square. So I joined that at a time when it was actually starting to really grow. I was very lucky, got in with good people there and learned an awful lot. Grew with the business as I grew personally, grew professionally. And after 15 and a half years of that, decided maybe, you know what, it's time to go it alone, see how I get on.
I'm interested to know what was the exact moment, because quite often people have an exact moment where they go, that's it, I'm getting out of this stable job, I'm going to start my own business.
There was a multitude of things. I had met my now wife at the time and we're starting to talk about the future and maybe family and stuff like that. And were we going to remain in Dublin? Were we going to move out? I loved where she came from, down a place called Ballygard outside Gorey and Wexford. You know, it was my thing. I was the one suggested, let's go down to Gorey and open the store. You know, everybody thinks I opened a store in Cavan first. Actually, it's the opposite way around. I did come back to Cavan, but I had to go through a few avenues to get there. So we opened our store in 2006, but the trigger really was hours, stress. I was doing the work. I probably really wasn't getting the recognition at that time. I felt I wasn't anyway. So I just thought, you know what? I'm doing so many hard yards here. You know, you could easily do this for yourself if you really wanted to. And, you know, like lots of things I've done in my life, Dusty, I like a challenge. I like to see if you're able for it. And I still have it today. I have this crazy feeling that, okay, I'll have a go at something. That's the way I am. I've always been like that. So it was like that in 2006 when I decided that this was for me from beginning to end. 3 months was all it was. I was up and running. And again, I'm so impatient. I've got to be the most impatient person you'll ever meet in your life, because when I decide I want to do something, I want it done now. I can't wait. I can't park that, or I just go after it. But that's a good or a bad thing I do anyway. That's the way it is. So before we actually knew it or really got time to settle on it, we were opening in Gorey in July 2006, which is ironically 20 years ago now. Mad stuff.
It's not an easy decision to make, to put your name over the door. What were the pros and cons?
I had a lot of people who knew me really well in the industry. It was a trust thing. I knew I was trusted as a salesperson or a customer service or looking after people. I knew I had that, and I had such a core customer base personally that I felt, that was the trigger. Every legal expert and accountancy expert has told me for the last 20 years since that was the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. But anyway, and maybe they're right. Time will tell. I don't know. But listen, it wasn't a vanity thing. Some people think, oh, you're so vain. No, it was nothing got to do with any of that. In fact, it was last resort. And when I spoke to Emer about it at the time, we decided, listen, the reality of it is here, there is a core customer base that will want to shop with you, they want to find you. You want to build that. On the previous 16 years of working in the industry and retail, that was going to be important, and that's how that ended up. And it actually doesn't lend itself to multi-location at all, Dusty, And even so now, people would walk into the store and I'd be on the shop floor working and say, this fella is probably like Harvey Norman. Does he exist at all? Or who is he? Or where
exactly.
Is he? What nationality is he? Or where does he come from? Or like, does such a person exist? But the reality of it is, yeah, I do.
You do exist. Here you are right in front of us. Good old Cavan man. From talking to you, setting up the podcast, one thing that comes across to me with you is that service is a very high value for you. Can you explain to me, what does good service look like to you?
Well, you communicate for a start. It doesn't cost anything to say hello or good afternoon or good morning or whatever the scenario is. How can I help you? Good service to me is factual. Dusty, somebody who knows their game, whether you go into a restaurant or you buy a car, and I could tell you a million stories about a million experiences I've had over the years with various different things, whether it's broadband providers or TV subscription providers, whatever the case may be, whether a service is just horrendous and you feel undervalued and devalued. And I guess I seen that at times from my mum when we were young. It was a bit like that scene in Pretty Woman. This place doesn't belong to you. You shouldn't be in here shopping kind of scenario. What are you doing here? There's nothing here that you can afford. I think it stems from look after everybody, from the customer that's in for the Hoover bags today will be in for a washing machine or a TV, or you want to keep them as a customer no matter what. Look after them. If they have a problem, you sort it. You go to the NCR to sort it. If you can't, you can't, but you've got to try. So good service for me is like, I would say to my team regularly, there's no guarantee that somebody's going to shop with you. There's no guarantee they're going to buy off you, but leave them with the impression that they would want to someday, that they'd want to come back to you someday. Don't leave it in a scenario where that crowd will never come back in there again, or we work hard to recover that ground if we've made a mistake. But good services, Dusty, what can I help you with? Know your product, know it inside out, know the difference between A, B and C,
Can I ask you about that actually? Because, I imagine that you know your game and you know the products inside out. But what about the sales staff who are on the floor of all of the stores? Do they get any kind of specific training to provide expert level advice to people?
So we run our own internal programs, and a lot of it is shadowing in the beginning, understanding the values that we instill, how you approach a customer, how you answer a phone, how you get back to somebody, you make sure you get back to them. And then we would take them through phase by phase by phase, from laundry to dish to refrigeration to built-in cooking to range to TV. You will find when you have somebody come into our industry, Dusty, that they have a natural feeling for a particular area. Some people are very comfortable in TV. Some people are very comfortable in phone and tablet. Some people are very comfortable in what we call white goods, which is your traditional washing machine, fridge, dishwasher kind of stuff, Our kitchen fit out would be one that's a big one for us. We're kind of specialists in that, where we will tailor your appliance needs. We'll have that discussion with you, about if you're fitting a new kitchen, what are you thinking, or what's your mindset? Have you thought about this technology versus this one versus that one versus the other one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The training part of that is quite in depth. So you would engage with brands, particularly the really more technical brands, the ones that have all the spec, the ones that people are gravitating towards, and make sure that your team are au fait with the functions, the features, the benefits versus another brand. And then I would do some internal training, or a lot of internal training actually, with those guys to be able to show what's the difference between A, B and C, or what's the difference between A, B and C within a range. Like, I mean, you could look at, let's just pick a Miele washing machine or a Bosch washing machine or a Siemens washing machine and go, I really want one of these good brands, so I've decided on this one, but what's the difference between Series 4, Series 6, Series 8 within that brand? So when you talk about 35 years ago, when I started in the industry, Dusty, you went in and you had a choice of 6 or 7 washing machines. You now have a choice of 52 on an average shop floor, right? So, and you've got to know about those instantly. Like, I mean, I do some work where we do store designs and stuff like that for some reason, but you're speccing 52 washing machines. You could be at 60 plus refrigerators. In most of my stores, in the larger ones, we've over 70 televisions, so you need to know your product. It's a skill actually, and it's an undervalued skill and an underappreciated skill because it's viewed as one of those shop assistant type roles where actually it's more technical than that. If people would understand that.
No, I know that because like when I go in, I'll look for somebody and I will have a list of questions because you're looking at the unit, whatever it is. In my case, it's always big screen TVs. I always need bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You need people to know their stuff. You said like you've got 52 different washing machines, 70 different. Why do you carry so many? Why don't you just whittle it down and go, we only carry the best 10?
Because it's important for a customer, and it's important that you cater for all customers. Because I remember my father, God be good to him, when I got a bike one time and I took the mudguards off it because I thought it was cooler looking, right? And he said to me, you're a very clever guy, he said, because the fella that made that clearly put those on and they weren't needed at all, So in other words, he was really digging at me, in other words, what do you know? But the reality of it is they make all of this product worldwide and they make it because of the demand for it, and they make it because people want it, and they make it because no two people are the same. Everybody wants a different color, or they want a different spec, or they want a different load size, or they want a different combination with the dryer, or they're just gravitating from a version of it that they've had for 12 years to the next one. And in Europe in general, and obviously it's filtered down to Ireland now, there's new brands have appeared, there's new technologies from those new brands that have appeared. There's Wi-Fi connectivity, there's savings on detergent and water, etc. And really and truly, if you're going to be something in your game, like it's no different for anybody. In my game, I want to be able to provide the products that the people are looking for. Sometimes you'd have that product there, but you need to be able to explain what the alternatives are to that particular range or brand.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very important for me as a retailer that we're in that position.
You obviously have a lot of experience over the years of dealing with people. What's the biggest lesson you've learned about dealing with people?
Be nice.
Simple as that, isn't it?
Simple as that. Be nice and be kind. I work in an industry, Dusty, where lots of things are mechanical. Lots of things can go wrong. You're in situations where there are delays. Currently, we're experiencing some of that with what's happening in the Middle East, etc., because components from certain factories that go to European factories manufactured are getting held up. There's all of this kind of stuff going on. Container costs rise and all of those various different things. But you have to go around that. But having an understanding or a rationale around understanding these things and these challenges, it's just be nice. It's not a big ask.
No.
If you can't do somebody a good turn, then don't do them a bad one.
There you go. There you go. Let's talk about the podcast, because this is your podcast and it's Dominic Talks Tech. Tell me, what is it you want people to get out of this podcast as we go along?
When I explain this to you, Dusty, I hope it makes sense that when I do advertising and we spend, it would buy a nice house, the money we spend on marketing per year, right? To try and get a message across to the customer about how we're set up, what we do. And invariably that money is like, well, this is this price, or it has this spec, or it has this feature. But it's difficult to communicate the difference between A, B and C, or X, Y and Z in conventional marketing. So for me, there's so much new technology out there. I see it on my shop floors when people would walk in, Dusty, and they'd ask about an oven. And then you'd start to explain, there's a steam oven, there's a combi steam oven, there's a steam assist oven, and they're going like, steam? They didn't even consider that, So more information, I guess. I'd actually like to get across as well about what the commitment is to environmental and that, I get asked on the shop floor every single day, well, do you take away the old one and what do you do with that, And to be fair to us Irish, we lead the charge across Europe, in my opinion, on that. I think we're very good at it. Nobody understands how that whole mechanic works or what we do there or how our tonnage is recognised. So it's kind of like explaining. And also, my wife said this to me today, like this career didn't serve you too badly, Dominic, but nobody wants to come into it anymore because they probably don't understand how more profile this is than what regular shop work is, like it's more technical. And maybe there are people wondering about, well, maybe the college thing is not for me, or a little bit of it is, or where do I fit? What could I be good at, etc. So some of that stuff.
So thinking about the podcast, are you going to be like kind of just reviewing various, kind of products and product lines, or are you kind of going to be a little bit more general about a specific area? Like you mentioned ovens, and I didn't even know there was such a thing as a steam oven. So just kind of talking about ovens and just kind of the technology and what's available and what the advantages are, and talking about it in a more general and a peek behind the curtain kind of a way.
I guess what happens on the shop floor for me is I think people that might listen to this might be thinking about upgrading the kitchen. They might be thinking about a new TV at World Cup. They might be thinking about a new TV at Christmas. They might be thinking about, well, is there any value in Black Friday, for instance, the big Black Friday question mark, I have some strong views on that. Maybe not for now. Equally, how do I know a product? What can I trust? How do I choose between A, B, and C, so how can we help with that? So I'd hope more people will come into my stores, but if they don't, I hope that they get the right product at the right price that suits their lifestyle, rather than, buying something and having to change it in 3 or 4 years' time and not enjoy that experience. Because when you have a good product in your house and you're enjoying using it, it's telling, because, you're in social environments or events, Dusty, and you hear people talk about their Hoover, how much they hate it or how much they love it, or their robot, how much they hate it or how much they love it, or they bought a TV and they bought a big 75-inch and they got it for 600 quid, but the picture's terrible, and you're going like, well, okay, well, we can help you understand why. Now, it wouldn't be terrible in all sources, but on some TV stations it could be, it potentially could be. So, well, why is that? So yeah, if we could do some of that stuff. And also, you know what I'm going to say to you? I love what I do. I love product. Right? I love talking about product. I love engaging with people about product. I love helping them with sourcing product, or what's best for them, or what fits their lifestyle, or what fits their budget. Like, the big B word, we all hate that one, but anyway, it's a reality. So for me, it's fun. Now, we start talking about what accountants talk to you about, or marketeers talk to you about, you've lost me.
Yeah, I think what you're going to deliver is you're going to deliver surprising insights nobody would ever think of, okay? And that are really, really useful, all right? And you'll find out, like, if you're going to be talking about tellies, you're not going to be talking about, well, get the Samsung blah blah blah, or the whatever, the such and such whatever size and all. You'd just be talking about them in general, about what to look out for, and I think that'll be good. And I remember overhearing a conversation you had with somebody, and you were talking about the difference between two different washing machines and the price. They were kind of, I don't know if I'm going to spend the other 50 quid or whatever, and you had a great way of putting it. Explain that to me.
For the most part, Dusty, the difference between an average product and a really good product is less than the price of one service call, right? When you talk about a service call, like an average service call for somebody called out to your house to investigate your issue is 120 quid. Now, some are less, some are more, but the average is about 120. Right? And there's no guarantee that that's going to get it sorted. The other interesting thing about it is, well, you need to put value on your time, because you got to be off work, you got to be at home, you got to wait for this, all this malarkey. And for me, I'd prefer you got your 8 years or 10 years use out of your product and not have to go through this turmoil. Now, at the same time, I'm very conscious that I work in an industry where we sell everything mechanical, and it can happen on good product. But when we measure it in terms of failure rates, percentage failure rates on product, we're very, very confident that the product that we would say, pay the 50 or 60 quid more for it and get it, is a fair percentage rate failure-wise below the one that you may have been considering. And we know this. So, and we measure it the whole time. So, and it's not just about that. There's a performance issue. How good is it on whites? What's it like on dark colours? What's the wash times? Like all of these various different things, where it's not considered, sometimes when, what's the noise level? Another big one. And
I would never have thought of that.
Yeah, but we'll
the
ask
minute
you
you
in
say
store,
it now, I'm thinking the washing machine and the dishwasher. My God, I'd love both of them to be quieter. That's what I think I'm going to get out of listening to the podcast, is just those kind of things that I never considered. Dominic, I kind of want to talk about the products and the products that you decide that you are going to carry in store and how you test them. Have you ever refused any? Let me start off with that big decision. Which brands are good enough for you? Because you've got a really good reputation for the brands that you carry.
They have to demonstrate that every year that they're good enough for us, to be fair. So it's not that it's a given. Our Germanic brands are really good. Our Neff, Siemens, Bosch, Miele, your old, trusted, reliable brands. Having said that, we need to be very careful, because within some of those brands, there are products or products that are not coming from your traditional, what you would associate as a Germanic factory, that might not have the same rate or the same experience that you would get from something a bit further up the food chain, for that matter. So we would measure and watch that the whole time. I'll give you one example. There are technologies now, people buy a lot of induction hobs, cooktops,
Yeah.
So induction's a great technology. It's energy efficient, it's fast, it's safe, all of these various different things. But there are different wattages within some of the brands, and some of the lower price ones, the wattage can be quite low, which means your cooking experience is not what you would expect it to be when you get this thing home. And we come across this sometimes where a customer might have purchased something online, for instance, and they've seen a particular brand at a good price. And, oh, that's an amazing price for that induction hob, I'll take that. Then they get it home and they realise that they can't use all their zones at the same time, or they can't use them all at full power at the same time. So in store, we deal with a lot of that kind of stuff. So that gives you an example of when we're picking a range and we're picking spec, we look at failure rates from the previous year within the different price categories. How reliable was it? How good was it? What was customer feedback like online or on the web? And we relay all that information back to the brands to decide what the lineup is going to be. Then we would look at what their European numbers are like. What are you selling across Europe? What's got good feedback? Then we would look at the features that it comes with. Like, what does this product come with? Like in an oven, what's the racking like? What's the timer like? What's the functions like? Is it multifunction? Is it fan oven only? Is it closed door grilling or not? Has it pyrolytic cleaning or not? What price is that sitting at in the market? And then we would benchmark that against the other brands ourselves to say, well, because we deal with all the brands. So I might decide, okay, well, thanks for your offer on that particular product, but it doesn't fit because there's better spec from a better brand with a better reputation sitting within that.
And what happens then when you do that, when you refuse to stock something?
I refuse.
There's nothing they could do.
No, not particularly. They've got to go and I like, this is not unusual for me, a thing to go through. Like, I mean,
I don't want to name a particular brand or product, but can you give me an example of something that you went, not for us?
I can. There's a European brand that went through some difficult times some years ago, and I used to do a lot of business with the brand. And they came to me some years ago and they offered me serious marketing money, lots of support, good display terms, all of the things that would really whet your appetite as a retailer, over and above what would whet your appetite as a retailer. I looked at the spec of the product. I got some service history on what was happening in the marketplace at the time, and I just said, no, this is not coming onto our shop floors, because it's not a good fit for our customers, and it's not a good fit for me as a retailer, because I'm not going to put my name to selling a product or a brand that's going to let a customer down. So that doesn't mean that that can't happen, but it can happen by accident sometimes. But at the same time, Dusty, I knew on this particular one it wasn't a fit for us, and we walked away from it. We walked away from significant support to list it, but it wasn't a fit.
Speaking of brand names, you carry a lot of brand names and a lot of high-end, mid-range to high-end brand names. Why should a customer, I should say, decide to invest in premium brands? What's the advantage?
Sometimes you don't have to for a start. Right?
Oh.
Because it depends on your habits. You know, do you entertain at home? Are you really into cooking? If not, well then, you know, you can have the brand name, or you can have that quality from a brand name, but maybe not all the spec that some of the other models may come with. So we may save you some money there. Ultimately, it comes down to your own habits. Like, let's take a washing machine, for instance. You know, like you have somebody like myself and my wife going to buy a washing machine. We've got 3 teenagers, all doing sport, all in school or college. Some change their clothes 3 times a day for some sport reason. You know,
there's a daughter in there somewhere. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we need to be very careful on this one. So, so therefore, the requirement for me for a washing machine is different than somebody who's using the machine 3 times a week, who's maybe, you know, 1 or 2 house user, etc. So, or maybe their work habits are very different than somebody who's working, you know, in farming or in machinery or in whatever walk of life that possibly could be. So we need to establish that first and then try and explain, well, the reason that you need to go up in price is because you're actually working this product. So you want it to last 8 to 10 years. If you buy a Miele product, they factory test for 10,000 cycles. So you're looking at 17 to 20 years. So but then again, you have to have the budget and the work for that. There's no point in buying that product unless you've got the work to give it. So the reality of it is we get down to iron all of that out and see what fits for you. So
it's interesting. Again, it's that's what I'm saying. It's getting another completely different view, because I would go in and I'd be looking on price. But what you say about, well, how much use are you going to give that machine? If you're going to use it 3 times a day, well then, it needs more.
We've got to be honest, you know.
Yeah. But then you're equally, I think, as forthright saying to somebody, well, look, if you're going to use it twice a week, why are you buying that? You don't need it. It's too much for you.
Well, they may, because they're brand loyal or they particularly like the way that the interface on it or how it fits for them using it, etc. You know, a lot of people nowadays don't realise that your washing machines run for so much longer maybe than something you bought 12, 10 years ago. And we need to try and explain that the same thing with new dryers, new heat pump dryers, that technology. It's different than your old dryer that you may have had for 20 years that had a timer and an element in it. So to try and explain those things. And also, I like talking to customers about their commitment to the environment, you know, like, I mean, because I see in our business, Dusty, product that comes back for recycling, because, you know, we're members of We Ireland. There's an obligation on us to recycle. So when we deliver a product, if you've got something to come back for recycling, we take it back. And I'm looking at the product coming back. I'm seeing it in my yard when the guys empty the lorries every morning. And I'm going like, that's only 3 years old. That's only 6 years old. That's only 5 years old. And you go like, what's the story here? And this thing has to go now, has to be dragged back on the lorry back to us, has to be taken off the lorry, has to be palletized, has to be cleaned, and then has to be collected by another lorry to go and be stripped down for recycling. So I think we need to really understand that we could do as a nation with really stripping that down, maybe have a little bit better product. And also when you look at detergent uses, water usages, all of these various different things, and bear in mind, you know, and this is an interesting one, when you're talking about a washing machine that uses so much detergent, so much water, so much power, all of these various different things, there's an average 13,000 of those sold every single month in this country. 13,000, right? So you can imagine a small saving 1 month on X amount of machines, the contribution that makes to environmentally is pretty colossal.
Yeah.
You know,
even if you were able to do some kind of a saving on the foam packaging that comes in, the white foamy stuff. Right?
Yeah, that's another interesting one. But
well, there you go. That's another thing. Listen, let's talk about, I don't know, money.
Yeah.
And prices. Yeah. I'm sure he's bracing up now. He's ready for this. I'm sure you're asked this a million times, like, you know. I mean, we do have a lot of international brands that are available here in Ireland. How are you able to compete with them on price?
With the big multiple retailers, I guess that's what you're referring to there. So that, funny enough, is not such a big challenge, because for a start, we're members of Expert. The strength in that it's a European group of retailers. It's an Irish group of retailers, and actually an Irish group of very, very, very strong retailers with big numbers being done every year in our industry, much more than the multiples potentially would be doing. And for that reason, pricing is not a problem. You know, we're competitive. Margins in electrical, as most people would know, are pretty tight, so you've got to be sharp. But the reality of it is, Dusty, you know, nobody's going to give Dominic Smith Electrical €1 more for a product if they're not competitive. They might use them for information. They might like the guy they've been speaking to. They might like the fact that they'll get it in the next day or that afternoon, potentially, or definitely within 2 days. They might like, you know, local retailers, I think, are undervalued in many things. I'm talking about supermarkets and shoe shops and every type of small retailer in our country because of what they give back to the community. And I don't think that's factored in enough either. But for that matter, nobody is going to give us €1 more for a product than they can get it somewhere else for. And nowadays, you could be talking to a customer and having a really good conversation, getting into all the detail on the features, benefits, this product versus this Bosch versus the Siemens versus the Miele versus the Whirlpool versus the Electrolux, or whatever the case may be. They have their phone in their hand and they're checking every price of every model we're talking about. And if you're not razor sharp, it's over. So we've got to be on it. And that is a massive investment for a retailer in price checking and online price checking and in-store price checking, just to make sure that you're competitive. You've got to be competitive. It's over before it begins if you're not.
I'm really looking forward to this series too, getting more of this kind of background and a peek behind the curtains thing like you're sharing with us today. I think it'd be fascinating. Can I wrap up with one last question for you, Dominic? Okay. I like what you said about having your name over the store and it's not necessarily a good thing. Yeah. I often find anybody who puts their name on something, it's like you're literally signing and taking responsibility for it. And I think that's very important, isn't it? Looking ahead to 20 years' time, all right, and I'm thinking about kind of legacy now, and you're retiring from the business.
Oh, wow. That's a heavy one.
That's a heavy one. Ah, well. What do you want people to be saying about you in 20 years' time?
He ran a good show, right?
Yes.
I was at a funeral of a lady, really nice person, actually, and I knew the family reasonably well, but she had really good time for me, the husband told me, because 20 years ago when he was very ill or sick in a Dublin hospital, she needed to pick up headphones and a speaker for him in hospital, and she was leaving her home and she wasn't going to make it to the shop in time to get it there. And how could we do this? I actually went up to the Arklow bypass at the time, or the new Gorey bypass as it is now, and met her on the road and gave it to her so she could bring it on up the road to the hospital. And that, he said, was one of the examples that was used to describe what it's like to do business with us. There is a personal thing about it. I'd like to think that there was a personality to our business. I'd like to think that there was a willingness to do right by people. I'm actually very proud of the fact that we give back to the community quite substantially. I've been involved in a number of really good projects with various different charities over the last 20 years that I've seen make a difference to people. There are so many, and we weren't found wanted in that regard. And ultimately, you see customers coming into me now and they go, I bought all my kitchen appliances off you in Discount Electrical in 1995. And you're going, oh my sweet Jesus. So I love that loyalty. I love that I'm now, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever the case may be, either starting to serve either the second or the third generation of some of these families in many cases. So it stays with us because the legacy really is in the service you give and what you offer. And for me, if that's good enough, well, then I'm happy with that. To know that we have satisfied people and satisfied customers. And if they're not satisfied, that they come and talk to us. And then we sort it. So a guy said to me many, many years ago, he said, you're not always going to get measured on the service you give. You're not always going to get measured on how good the experience was. How you really, really get measured if something goes wrong, how you sorted it. And for me, that's a big one.
Well, Dominic, we've covered a lot over this podcast episode, and I have a feeling that the podcast series is going to be an enormous success, and you're turning your hand now to podcast presenter. I look forward to hearing how it goes for you. But for this initial opening episode, thank you very much for your time and your honesty.
Thank you, Dusty. Much appreciated.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you would like to find out more about what we covered in this episode, you'll find notes, links, and more in the description area of this podcast. Do remember to press follow for our show so you get the next episode automatically. Also, please do share with a friend who you think would find it interesting. Just tell them to search for Dominic Smith Talks Tech on their podcast app. Our podcast today was produced by dustpod.io and brought to you by DominicSmithElectrical.com. Until next time, thank you for listening.